Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of Nerds Night Out. I'm your host, Tom Tormey, and this program is really a vehicle to kind of celebrate some of the most creative and influential minds in the comic book industry. And I'm blessed enough tonight to be joined by David Quiroz Jr., and we're going to be talking about his comic book that is out on Kickstarter. If you're in California, if you're in Nevada, if you're in New Mexico, you can go to your local comic book shop and pick it up. If you're here like me on the East Coast, Kickstarter is a great way to support David and the Night of the Chihuahuas book. David, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. As we were talking about before the show, I had the pleasure of speaking a few months back to your partner in crime, Nathan, and we were talking about the book and the impetus and the stories behind it. And I do have to ask you, I'm sure that's one of the first things that people ask you when they see these stunning covers, which, again, I want to talk about in detail. They have to ask, why Chihuahuas? What inspired you to go down the route of Night of the Chihuahuas? We've had zombies. We've had there's a great indie book out called Slowpokes about sloths, killer sloths. And I just love the idea of Chihuahuas, because when I think of them, I think of these fragile little creatures shaking with the slightest breeze. But in your book, they are the primary antagonist. So tell me how you settled on Chihuahuas for that role.
Yeah, I mean, I've been around Chihuahuas all my life. We rescue them, and they're despite being, you're correct, they're fragile, they tremble at the slightest breeze, but they are also incredibly defensive and very fierce little animals. And I was always getting bit on the finger, and I constantly would ask these little creatures, like, you're so little, if you could do all the things that you think you can, you would be illegal to own. And then it got me thinking, like, well, what if they could do all these things that they think they can? And what if instead of just nipping ankles, they were ripping people's legs off? And it was both terrifying and hilarious to me. And I grew up watching campy horror films. Like, that's my bread and butter, is growing up these 80s creature features. And I just immediately thought, like, we could make a movie like that, or that premise would serve to make like a hilarious and, gory and fun horror concept. And my mind just went, and there it is. Now we got 5 issues of it. So
and I'm glad you did. And they're 5 glorious issues, by the way. But you did mention a few seconds ago, you said you thought it would make a great idea for a movie. And I have to ask, it is now 2024, the 20th anniversary. In 2004, you were the editor, writer, and the star of a Night of the Chihuahuas movie. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and where, if anything, if anywhere, we can see it in its entirety today?
yeah, so basically I had graduated from film school. I moved out to LA, like typical, like most film school graduates do. I got tired of working in the studio system as an assistant, and I thought at the time they were creating shot on digital movies that were getting released in Blockbusters and Hollywood Videos, for those of you who remember what those were. And so I thought to myself, hey, instead of living away as an assistant, I'm going to go move back to Phoenix, where it's cheaper, and get a video camera and make my own horror film. And the idiot that I am, I broke every screenwriting rule, where I said, like, I'm going to set it at night outside, and I'm going to feature animals, and I'm going to do all these bloody effects. And it's like, if, I should have done a contained film with like 2 or 3 characters. Instead, I tried to do this like huge sprawling thing, and it was, we didn't have the resources or the talent to pull it off. We finished it. It was, completed. It was assembled. And then we started printing DVDs, and I realized, I was like, man, this is awful. So we shut it down. Some of them snuck their way out into the internet, where they exist to this day. But like, if I find one in the wild, I buy it, or, acquire it somehow and destroy it, because it's embarrassing, not just because I was the main actor and I can't act, also because I was a director and I couldn't direct. And it was one of those things where, like, it was an unrealized concept that, like, kudos to us. On one hand, we finished it, which a lot of people don't even finish, but it was also like, it just wasn't ready. It wasn't suitable for public consumption, and we realized it pretty quickly. But the word had already gotten out, and like to this day, I get emails from people around the world asking me where I can get a copy of it. And so I always direct them back to the comic book, because the comic book is like the realized sort of potential of this concept. It was like, hey, this concept was always so much fun and everybody loves the idea of it. We didn't execute it well at all in this movie. We tried, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And there's probably some merit as like The Room type, is so bad it's good type of concept, but like the comic book is something I am proud of, and that is the words come to life.
So somewhere on this beautiful planet of ours, there could be a midnight showing right now of Night of the Chihuahuas, and people are getting dressed up like a la Rocky Horror Picture Show, celebrating this film, not only for its campiness, but you know what? I do have to admire, and I'm sure most people do, your ambition. I mean, like you said, you went with all the screenwriting, filmmaking no-nos, filming it at night, involving animals. If you just tossed in children, you would have met the whole, the trifecta of difficulty.
Exactly.
But you have to celebrate the art form for it as well. Just the idea of you taking that film or that concept and bringing it over to the comic book. I've always told people, especially going back into the 40s and 50s, that comic books are generally the perfect medium, because you were limited only by the ability of the writer and the artist to kind of craft that image and fit the words with the images, whereas filmmaking requires and this is not to downplay the comic book medium at all, but budgetarily, the filmmaking would be extraordinarily difficult to pull off versus the comic. But have you had any difficulties in translating from your original concept of this being a film to now it being a 5-issue comic book? Have there been any difficulties in that transition?
There have been some, because the thing is, like, it was always a concept that everybody would keep asking me about. And they're always like, you got to remake Night of the Chihuahuas. And I was always like, at that point, I was starting to write for comic books, and I had that concept and I wanted to apply it to comic books. So my thought was just like yours, hey, the artist can do whatever they want, but sometimes it's the perspective and what we're trying to fit into a panel, and it's giving the artist room to breathe where they can really, like, develop some of the details that they care about versus the big splash that maybe the script calls for. And so learning how to work with an artist and make sure that you're respecting their artistic vision, because they are bringing a very great talent to this collaboration, and then versus what you might have originally intended, and learning how to interpret. Sometimes the two of you have a different idea for how to go about this, and what is going to be the best way to pull that off for the reader's sake, because ultimately that's this is a form that we are sending out in the world for purchase. It's a commercial commodity, and so you do have to respect that as well. It's not just, well, I'm going to do whatever I want because I don't care. It's like, well, no, that doesn't pay for the printing and the artist fees and all that stuff. So that is about it. But like, otherwise, man, there were like scenes in the script that, like, when I originally wrote them, they would have required, like, 40 Chihuahuas that were highly trained and all these special effects and like stuff. And now you just put it on the page and you can get all that gory detail and that fun, visceral reaction of all these little dogs coming through the walls, and just, it's so much fun to see it come to life, the way that I had always intended it, kind of.
And that is great. That is great to see that. So in translating it from the film to the comic, and now coming to the realization that you get to do all those cool things that maybe in 2004 and filming were not possible. I would imagine that it is difficult for any comic book writer to get someone on board with issue 1. I would also imagine that it's doubly difficult to get them back for issue 2. So how is it that how do you kind of craft that transition? Right now, Night of the Chihuahuas is available. You could buy all. I believe it is the 5th as of right now. Is the 5th issue out? Or no? Right. I think March was the release date for the 5th, or in or around March. So
Correct.
How do you think, how in your mind, how do you create that hook, that comeback? You loved issue 1, I'm gonna get you back for issue 2. You loved issue 2, I'm gonna get you back for 3. So yeah, please.
Oh, I was going to say, so it's like a cliff, the story arcs, basically each issue has a contained story arc. So by the end of the issue, that part of the story resolves itself while also making you want to see what the hell happens next. It's like, at the end of issue 1, they find the first massacre, they find the aftermath of this thing. And so it's like, okay, well, what could possibly be responsible for this? Well, you got to read issue 2. End of issue 2, it was, okay, we've got all the main cast. Now we're on the road to try to hunt these things down. We got to see if they manage to do that. And then issue 3, it was, okay, we found the last survivors. You got to see what happens to them. And so it's constantly like using that sort of episodic
Mhm.
if you're a writer, it's almost like writing for episodic TV, where you're, resolving story arcs while having an overarching series arc that you're still treating well. And so what we're hoping is that if we did our job, they want to come back for more. If your
Right.
story is compelling enough, the reader will come back for the next issue. But if they don't, then that is sort of a fault on either your story, it's either a fault of the story or it just wasn't for them. And so we feel like, and the returns so far on our Kickstarters and the return on like the number of stores that we're growing to, it seems to support the fact that, we do have something that people really enjoy, and we have something that our
Oh yeah.
readers have. They want, they've been clamoring for issue 5, and our Kickstarter is just doing amazing right now because of the support that we've built up over the course of the previous 4 issues of, going to these cons and shaking hands and knocking on doors in comic book stores and like introducing ourselves, because it's all word of mouth. It's all, we've never had a marketing
Right.
budget. We've never had anybody take over for us. It's always been Nathan and I just, doing the hard work of introducing ourselves and our work, which we were very proud of. And luckily the reception has been so positive that we've gotten to this point where we're able to resolve the storyline. Because I mean, everybody who's done independent art knows it's never a given that you're going to be able to finish. It's never a given that this is going to complete itself, because there's so many outside factors that have nothing to do with your merit as an artist whatsoever. But
I understand publishing deadlines, getting that absolutely. How did you settle on your artist for the series?
We had found a guy, the first artist, his name was RC Torres. We found him through a mutual connection, and he was local to Phoenix. We're based out of Phoenix, Arizona. He was local to Phoenix. We lost him for after issue 2 because he got hired in, basically got just a great job that we could not possibly compete with. So we had to move to a different artist to finish out the series. And then it's all been like, as we get out there and network ourselves, we're meeting more artists. And luckily we're at the point right now where artists are coming up to us, or like, finding us and saying, hey, I would love to, submit a pitch for a cover, or, are you guys looking for artists, things like that. So it's just a lot of networking, man. It's you got to get out there. You got to be somebody who other people want to work with, because we have a really good, we built up a good reputation for ourselves as far as being professional, treating people well, being collaborative. That's the other part of it as well. So.
You guys are amazing. I've had the pleasure of talking to yourself and Nathan in the past. Very personable, hardworking, dedicated, and I'm sure that is resonating with the fans as well. And Nathan and I, last time we spoke, we were talking about the different cons that you guys were attending, whether some were more towards the horror or more towards the comic. If you had a preference, not to isolate any one particular audience, but I assume you're hitting them in and around the Phoenix area. Where do you find the most receptive audience, in the world of comics or in the world of horror, somewhere in between?
I want to say somewhere in between, but honestly, I'm a horror guy. Like I go to horror conventions myself, even if I'm not staffing a table there. But like, we get a way better reception at comic conventions because we are selling a comic. And even though a lot of times you go to a comic con and there's like, 60% of the business there is anime. And so of course, they walk right by our
God,
table.
yeah.
But we find a really great audience there, as opposed to like a horror con. We get a lot of people that really enjoy the concept, but they don't read comic books. So they're just not interested in original art. They're more looking for like another Terrifier poster or something like that. And so it's like, it's more fun to go to horror cons, but we do better and we make more fans at a comic con, which is kind of weird, but it's been fun either way.
Right, right. I'm a big fan of going to horror cons myself, so I can understand that. But in that regard, I mean, I guess you might have great success if you started selling anime Funko Pops, and then you'd cover 60% of the anime and the other 45% now that it just seems to be Funko Pops at every convention. But I did actually see with Nathan last time we talked, he did have a mock-up of a Chihuahua toy.
That mock-up is now available on our Kickstarter. So if you go to our Kickstarter now, we have those vinyl collectibles that are done up like Fifi from issue 2, the cover, the Chihuahua with the big jaws open and all the teeth. That's available as a add-on right now. So if you go to our Kickstarter, you can get yourself one, and they're glow in the dark, which is awesome.
I do love that Phoebe cover. with the
Yeah, that's
dog
one of
tag
my
and the big
favorites.
Phoebe. So I mean that's amazing. So I could go to Kickstarter. I could go to the Night of the Chihuahuas Kickstarter, and with my pledge into supporting the book, I could get one of those vinyl Chihuahuas of Phoebe.
You got it.
That's pretty cool. I think that's a very clever idea. I think that's I think that'd be. Have you got those onto the con floor as well as you?
We have never sold one, but we have taken them as, because the last con that we did was Los Angeles Comic Con, and
Oh, okay.
we took the prototype, I guess you would call it. So it was not for
Right.
sale, but we were showing people to get them excited for it, and we had a lot of people. Reaction to it was great. We're
I
also
bet.
doing T-shirts. So T-shirts is the other one that have been
Yeah.
selling like hotcakes. Every time we take them to a convention, people just chew them up. We've got this one that's done up like that logo that you see all the time, the Obey T-shirts. We got it with the
Right.
Chihuahua face, and it says Bite on it instead of Obey. And it's so much fun, and people love, like, you're getting such a great reaction out of it. So you can also get those through our Kickstarter as well.
And they are a lot of fun. I absolutely adore the merchandise. The shirts are amazing, especially I love a good cover. And I will tell you, and I know you're not supposed to judge a book by a cover, but man, oh man, if I was going to judge your book by their covers, they solid gold, baby, solid gold. They are
Thank you.
fantastic. The homages are spectacular. Everything from Jaws to Godzilla. I mean, just beautifully done. In regards to the Kickstarter, are there ways for people to get their hands on those beautiful variant covers as well?
Yeah, so we have in these ones we did, so our homages were to Game of Thrones, which we call our cover the Game of Bones, and then we have Ghost, instead of Ghost Rider, it's Ghost Spider, and then we also have that cover, the variant that's for I forget that there's a name for that design, but the Obey design, but done up like the Chihuahua.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we have those available in both regular comic prints. We also have some metal foils, some hollow foils, which look amazing, and you can get those as well through the Kickstarter. So we're trying to play, because they're attention getters. We put them up at the con. People
Sure.
stop and they look. They're like, "Oh my god, that's like Chihuahuas, but with a Chihuahua. That's like Jaws, but with a Chihuahua. That's hilarious." It gets people's attention. The story focused covers are going to be coming in the second print, and then no spoilers, but like we are working on the next series as well.
Oh, fantastic. A follow up to this. I was wondering about that because I was thinking, is this 5-issue series a self-contained? Well, I assume it is a self-contained story, but is issue 5 the end of Night of the Chihuahuas? So with that little, so I am glad to know that there's potentially going to be more out there. So
Yeah.
LA Comic Con, you went big. That's a big show.
It was great. What was great is that they invited us to be guests there, which was flat, like very humbling. And,
Yes.
we had such a great response from people there. We made a lot of friends. We had been there the previous year, and we had so many people coming back to like finish get the last of the, or the rest of the issues that we had available. Because when we went the first time, we only had issues 1 and 2. And then we came back this time and we had 3 and 4 with us. And so people were snatching them up. And, it's that you make these connections at these shows that you continue to go to over the years, and people remember you, and they come up and they talk about everything that's happened in the last year. And it's just one of my favorite parts about doing this. It's like, it is a grind for sure. You got to be hustling, but these connections that you make with fans at all the different shows, it's just awesome.
And have you found social media to be a useful tool in getting the word out about Night of the Chihuahuas as well?
Yeah, for sure. We are most active on Instagram, and hats off to Nathan, because Nathan controls the Night of the Chihuahuas account, and he does a really great job with, we share tons of Chihuahua content, because a lot of our fans, they're not even comic fans. They're just Chihuahua fans. They love Chihuahuas, or they know somebody who owns a Chihuahua and they bought a copy to get to them. And then that person wanted to finish the series, so they keep coming back and getting more for them. It's like stuff like that. And so we share a lot of Chihuahua related content. We also share like fan art. We share sneak peeks of what we do, and just lots of horror stuff. So it's really fun. But yeah, our audience has grown tremendously through that. I personally don't do Facebook, so Nathan has the Facebook account for Night of the Chihuahuas, but I think we're most active on Instagram.
I believe that's how I came across Nathan and the account as well. And of course, the stunning images that captured my imagination and captured my attention. So issue 5 tentatively scheduled for March. completing this first story arc, hopefully one of many in the future, but at least the first story. Are there plans to combine and sell it as a trade paperback graphic novel any way down the line?
Down the line, yes. It's not in the
Okay.
immediate future, and that won't be coming for probably until at least the summer, I would say. But it
Okay.
is something that we are going to work on getting together because we have had demand for that as well. We've had a lot of people ask us about that, but it's been a marathon, and we're ready to kind of relax a little bit. We've once the fifth one is done, that does conclude the main storyline. We're going to let that out into the world. Kind of kick back, work on some of our other projects while we get the second series ready. And then the trade paperback will get going sometime in the summer. But the trade paperback, it's like we want to have some new material to put on that, whether it be the
Right.
cover, different things that we can include inside of it. That way, if you bought all 5 issues, you don't feel like, oh, well, now there's
Just
just
reprinting.
it's just reprint. Thank you. Yeah, it's just
Right.
reprinted. It's like, no, we want to make it something special. And so we're working on some of those details right now.
That's great. And I'm glad that you're so kind of in tune with not just building an audience, but creating an audience that you appreciate as much as they appreciate you. And I do think that speaks volumes about both yourself and Nathan, and probably is a testament to how you're able to make these connections and build off of them. Uh, but I do have to ask you. You mentioned at the beginning of the program that you rescue Chihuahuas,
Mm-hmm.
and I as a cat owner my whole life, I really can't.
Oh,
So,
nice.
what goes into that process? Are you rescuing them? And I can't see on camera right now, but are there about 40 Chihuahuas running around your leg right now?
No, at the moment we only have one. So my kids have, as they're in a stage right now where their activities are taking up a lot of our time. So we haven't been able to devote the time to those rescues like we had been previously, but we do still work to fostering. And basically it's like, Arizona has one of the largest Chihuahua populations on the streets. Basically, it's like there have been newspaper articles, and I know this because people keep sending it to me, like I haven't seen it yet, but of like Maryvale is a suburb of Phoenix, and it's like there are so many Chihuahuas on the streets that they are like a nuisance where they're dangerous, because there's like 30 of them at a time. And so there's a lot of work to be done as far as finding homes for them all. And it's like Chihuahuas are a very special breed. And when people tell me they hate Chihuahuas, they're like, oh my God, I can't stand them. They're so loud and yippy and stuff like that. It's like they are pack animals, and if they're made to feel safe, they are the most loyal, the sweetest dogs in the world. But they have
Mhm.
to be made to feel safe, and one of the reasons that they never feel safe is because they're small size, and that's sort of what made them such such a fun thing to write about, is because you're taking all these like quirks about this breed and magnifying it as a horror thing, but realistically, I mean, they are very sweet, loyal animals that I understand that they're not for everybody. They are loud, they have that oversized bark that is just way bigger than their body, and they're very quick to
Mhm.
use it, kind of thing. But like, I don't know, they're my favorite breed. I grew up with them. My favorite dog ever, the main character in Night of the Chihuahuas, is named after that. So Coco is my favorite dog that I've ever owned. She was like an 18-year-old Chihuahua, and the dog that Erica carries in her purse throughout the series is named Coco for her. So kind of one of the inspirations
Oh,
for it.
that's really sweet. That's really cool. It's great to hear that, like, not only have they uh, they're the antagonist in the book, but in your life, you are the protagonist for the Chihuahuas. So that's pretty cool. That's a great little juxtaposition there. Uh, you've mentioned your love of kind of 80s schlock kind of horror movies. When you were formulating this concept of Night of the Chihuahuas, are there any one? Is there any one, or are there a few that kind of influenced your style, your writing style, or just kind of how you visually pictured this Night of the Chihuahua series going?
It's the combination of like, even though it was from the 50s, but that movie Them with the giant ants, it's like that kind of concept
Oh,
that you're thinking
sure.
of, like a small animal made powerful and terrifying. From the 80s itself, though, it was mostly like the zombie movies of Romero. I know Day of the Dead was in the 80s. Dawn of the Dead was not in the 80s, it was in the 70s, but that was another
Right.
big influence of that as well. Mostly what I think
All
about,
great
not
movies.
yeah, thank you. Not necessarily specific movies from the 80s, but more of like that tone of like that sort
Right.
of like
Okay.
the over the top special effects and the goofy characters and the premises that were always so far flung and exaggerated. And so when I think about like those movies that influenced me, all those little monster movies and stuff, and then just the feeling of, this
Right.
comic book, even though it's set in present day, it could be set in the 80s because nobody's like on a cell phone. Nobody's like doing these things that we have in contemporary films. There's no crappy CGI. It's all like everything that is, what made those movies great.
I do. And I love that. I love that. I mean, them takes ants and makes you petrified of them. And you look at an ant on the street and you're like, oh God, and now you're watching Dawn of the Dead, like you said, and you're thinking about malls as this haven of sin and depravity. Now you're looking at it like through a different lens. And I like what you're doing with Chihuahuas in that same tone. The idea that you're now looking at this very cute, passive creature, very loyal, very friendly creature, and now you're thinking, is Coco, is Phoebe inside this Chihuahua? As in from the book, of course. So I do like that. I think it's very clever. If you could take this concept now, and as you're running the gauntlet, you're hitting the cons, you're interacting with people, and you come across someone who is willing to say, you know what, I would love for that to be an animated series. I would love for that to be a live action film once again. Is that something that you'd be interested in exploring?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's honestly, that's one of the hopes. We would love to be able to spin this off into that, like having the audience that we have now and with the backing that we have. And hopefully if somebody were able to do it right, for absolutely. But I think I've learned enough about the industry and like in all the decades that I've been working to sort of know not to just, take the first offer that comes and be smart about it and make sure that it's going to respect your work and do it the right way and not just, I don't know, if the asylum called me up and was like, hey, we want to make, we're probably going to hold out.
Yeah, no. Maybe so. No, boy, what, Sharknado, right? That's Asylum, right? All those movies.
Yeah, like no shark to killer chihuahuas. So
nice, smart move. No, that's good. You're making the right call there. Sharktopus can go. Well, if you could, just hear me out because I do like a good versus. I do like a good verse. If you could take Night of the Chihuahuas and you could set them in the world of an established horror franchise, where would you envision? Could you see Night of the Chihuahuas in the world of Child's Play, Chucky?
I would go somewhere a little bit different with that, of like in the zombie universe. If we could do like a Romero-esque thing where it's like the Chihuahuas versus zombies, but now you have zombified Chihuahuas, and somehow the combination of the two of them just exasperate the situation, make each other build on each other, even though we wear our Romero influences on our sleeve in this project. But
right.
To kind of take the two of them and add something a little bit new and, new mutant breeds of both, and just, oh yeah, you could have so much fun with that.
I think they were great. And I love that. I'm a big zombie fan myself. I love, I like zombie literature sometimes more than I like the films, just because of that survival. Whereas, like you said, sometimes it's bad CGI or just, no disrespect to Tom Savini, amazing. But sometimes it's more about the gore and less about the story. But Romero, he was skilled at taking something and creating entertainment, but hiding inside of it social commentary.
Exactly.
Is that something you pulled as well? Because I know, as you mentioned earlier, the book is entertainment. It's designed to be fun and shocking. But is there that level, that Romero-esque hidden level of commentary inside of the book?
There's something that comes into play in issue 5, so I don't want to spoil too much, but like I went into this my favorite horror is always, and I believe 100%, is that horror is always about something. Horror is us telling stories about what we're afraid of or what our fears and our anxieties are, and we're wrapping them up in this like fun little package of like a monster or a slasher or whatever that creature is. But realistically, that creature represents our bigger fears, our bigger anxieties at large. And so in that, it feels silly to like talk about that and then say, and then the Chihuahuas are, but realistically, there's a whole thing about like
Yeah.
exploitation from a ruling corporate class of, because if you notice in the first 4 issues of Night of the Chihuahuas, all the characters belong to the working class. You know, they're all very much like left behind by the authorities, by the government, by all the stuff. And then when we get into who the bad guys are, which is revealed in issue 5, you know, spoiler alert, it's they find out that like they're being exploited by this larger corporate entity. And so I did approach it with that in mind. I did approach it, you know, like very consciously trying to tell that story, but it was first and foremost a splatter horror, campy, fun tale. But these are like the things of like, you know, the way that testing can be done in these like far-flung areas that, you know, rural folks are being kind of ignored or exploited by a larger, you know, money consuming, you know, entity. Then yeah, that's definitely something that I was going for. And it's going to get, we're going to explore that even more in the next series.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's definitely completes the homage to the Romero films. And as the tagline for Night of the Chihuahua says, God made them small, man made them
deadly.
Deadly. And I love it. I love it. God made them small, man made them deadly. And I just absolutely love it. And it's such a cool tagline. And the book itself is spectacular. Night of the Chihuahuas. David Quiroz Jr., if we wanted to find out more about the book, where would you direct us?
We have our website is nightofthechihuahuas.com, and you can always find us on Instagram, Night of the Chihuahuas, all one word as well. And we do a lot of posting there. If you're into Chihuahuas, if you love them, you hate them, whatever it is, check us out because we got something for everybody. And, you know, we're very active on there as well. We're always posting good content, and check it out. You know, give us a shot because I think we've got something that's fun and entertaining, and you know, God knows that we could use more of that in this world right now. And we are doing so well with our Kickstarter. And I always tell people, like, if you can back us, if you can afford to back us, please do. We could use the support. But if you can't afford it, because we know that not everybody can right now, it doesn't cost anything to give us a like on our project or to tell a friend about it, to share our posts, things like that. So you know, any kind of support. It doesn't have to be financial. It can be any kind of moral or social media support. We love it and we really appreciate it.
I've seen a lot of Kickstarter campaigns that are borderline exploitative, but in going to Night of the Chihuahuas Kickstarter, commitments start as low as $5 to get access to the digital copies of the books, and go higher, of course, for the metal covers and the different variants. But it's very accessible, as are you and Nathan. And I love talking to you both. And I love if you hit LA Comic-Con in December, are there any plans to hit any other shows in the upcoming months when the series begins to wrap?
Yeah, so actually, LA Comic-Con, they switched it to October this year.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. We used to December.
Yeah, it used to be. We're gonna do Phoenix Fan Fusion in Arizona. We're gonna be in El Paso for the Comic-Con. I will drop a little hint in there that the El Paso AAA baseball team are named the Chihuahuas, so we may have something in store for that. That's gonna be in April, and then we have a few other things that we're developing, but we don't have anything for sure in place just yet because con season is just kind of starting. So Motor City Comic-Con has two of them. They have one in October, one in November, one in May. So we're kind of looking at one of those as well. And then we'll be at Day of the Dead in Phoenix and Mad Monster in Phoenix as well, which are in May and July respectively.
Very cool. So if anyone's in the Phoenix area, please be sure to see David, Nathan, and check out Night of the Chihuahuas. David, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me. You are always as awesome. Night of the Chihuahuas is a spectacular book. I'm so glad, I as a fan of the book and as a fan of yourself, to see, I've been following you for a while now, to see the issues start rolling out, and now we're heading to issue 5, to see the culmination of it is really inspiring. You are such a hardworking, pleasant, well-written man, and it is a pleasure to talk with you, and I wish you all the success in the world. And I hope one day I am able to head to the theaters or go on Netflix and check out that Night of Chihuahua series or Night of Chihuahua film. I wish you all the success in the world. Thanks for taking so much time, your time out of your day to be with me and talk about your book. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. It was great to talk to you. Thank you.
Oh, thanks a lot, brother. Guys, I'm still Tom Tormey. This was Nerds Night Out. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.